Hello and welcome to Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'm your host, Karen Seltz, and I am here with my good friend, Anna Lang. Anna and I coach together in a transformational leadership program, and she is so freaking phenomenal. And we ran across each other on some other website or something, and I'm like, Anna, you got to come on my show. So that is what happened. Welcome, Anna.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Karen. I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm excited too. So, Anna is a personal development life coach. She's a speaker, a trainer, and she supports people in getting unstuck. She is essentially the relationship coach you call when the relationship you're struggling with is the one you have with yourself. So,
That's a
that's
tongue twister.
it is, but I did it right.
You did, you rocked it.
And I translated it from first person to third person on the spot.
Wow.
Damn. I know, right? So we're just going to dive in. We're going to have an organic conversation, see where it flows. And Anna, I'm going to start like, what are you sharing with people these days? What are you passionate about sharing?
Oof. Honestly, what I am really passionate about sharing nowadays is really talking to people about where their inner critic comes from and really creating that shift where it's not what you think it is. It didn't come from where you think it came from. It isn't an animal or a weird cartoon character or something that kind of planted itself in you, right? And talking to people about that and then helping them to reintegrate this part of them and showing them that it's actually a superpower. So I love
Ooh,
that. Yeah.
yes, I love it. So let's dive in. So I don't know where you want to start with this. I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to ask them out of order. So I'll just let you start at the beginning. Like, tell us what it is. If it's not what we think it is, what is it?
I'm so glad you asked. And by the way, there is no wrong order for this stuff because the way that I approach topics tends to be a little spastic. We'll say that. But let's start at the beginning. When you think of inner critic, when you think of negative self-talk, what do you visualize?
Oh, um, well, I've done a lot of work on this, so I just see like an unintegrated part of myself. Like for me, it's usually like a little girl or it's my mom.
Okay. That's really interesting that you have those too. And I often find people tend to have a whole bunch of these voices. And I really love too that you said your mom. Can you tell us more about that?
Oh, yeah. So my mom had a tendency to speak what was that, whatever was in her mind. So, so oftentimes it would come across as critical, or at least that's how I received it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so when you think of your inner critic or when you hear your inner critic, that's the voice you're hearing
Most of the time, I would say.
most of the time. And then
Yeah.
other times you're hearing a little girl. And tell us about the little girl.
Oh, the little girl is hurt and she's trying to protect me from being hurt.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
So
And I want to,
it's more like the don't do that, you could get hurt, rather
yes.
than after I did it and you're an idiot kind of thing.
And I love that. And that's exactly where I want to encourage us to go right now. When we think of our inner critic, and I have such an issue with the way people approach this, and especially there's one specific training, or actually probably more than one, where they encourage the attendees to pick a bizarre like cartoon character and to make
Mm,
fun of their inner critic. You don't have any power here, and go away and shut up and all the rest of it, and
mm,
that kind of stuff, and to really mock that part of themselves. And if we look at where that inner critic comes from, we got to go back to probably pre-5. And you want to look at what happens when you're between the age of 0 and 5. You have no agency, right? You're completely dependent on the environment. You have no ability to leave that environment. You don't have an income. You really don't have power. So your dependence, what you have control over, is your ability to morph and to morph into whatever it is you got to morph into to get your needs met. And for kids, that can be a whole bunch of different things. Like maybe it's being really quiet so dad doesn't beat the what out of you when you make the wrong move. Maybe it's that if you don't get the right grades, well, your parents are going to withhold your social rights, so you're going to basically be a prisoner in your own house. Maybe it's getting food. Maybe you're expected to do X, Y, and Z or behave in this way so that basic needs can be met, right? And what that does to a kid is it does a couple of things, because kids are ridiculously resilient. I don't think we give kids credit for how resilient and how strong they are. We really don't. Like, they are phenomenal. And for a kid, what they will do is they will see what's out there, and they don't have words for it, and they may not be able to articulate it, but they're going to see what's happening, and they're like, okay, this is the rule here, this is the rule there, this is the rule, that's the rule, that's the rule, this is how I gotta live, this is how I get it done. And I mean, you want to talk about powerhouse? These kids, our inner child, that's a powerhouse part of us. And those rules protected us, exactly like you said. Those rules kept us safe. Those rules ensured that our needs were met. Now, sometimes even the rules couldn't protect a kid. And that's when you end up with things like the kids breaking out, leaving, whatever, because they can't exist in the environment. They just can't. So they break out. But for most of us, we created some kind of rule set, and everyone's got one. Everybody's got this rule set. Now, the problem is that that part of us was so young and didn't get any training. So it didn't know how to evolve those rules. So those rule sets, if I'm 50, if I'm 40, if I'm whatever age I am, if I didn't get in and work with that part of me, that 5-year-old kid still living by those rules. Now, what do you think happens when a 5-year-old thinks, like, that 5-year-old is me, but it's living in me, and it sees me go to do something that used to get me smacked? What do you think the first thing that kid's gonna do?
He's gonna hide or tell you no,
Yeah,
like not to do it,
he's gonna
right?
scream. Sometimes maybe they like don't do it, or lash out. Depends on what the rules are. You gotta fight, you gotta do whatever it is. Those rules will come into play. And by the way, if you think of your internal rules, like you going to the gym and you getting a workout in your muscles, those muscles, like if you went to the gym every day and worked out one muscle, which is these rule sets, if you work that muscle for 40 or 50 or 60 years, you imagine how strong that muscle is.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you are in a boxing ring with a 5-year-old who has the muscles of like Andre the Giant, okay? It is overpowered and not like doesn't have any parameters. And that's where negative self-talk comes from. And that's the visual I encourage and invite people to come in with. You are not talking to a person that your mom, that's not who you're talking to. You're talking to the rules that your inner you made up to be safe from your mom, or to make your mom love you, or to
Mhm.
get whatever it is that you needed to get. And that little kid, you've been beating up on and pushing down ever since.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And yeah, this is a lot of the work that I do with people too is bringing those parts back in, like integrating them because they're not bad. They all have positive intention for you. So when people, like you were saying, I remember somebody saying like, "Oh, I'm going to ship my inner critic off to Tahiti." I'm like, "Well, good, nice try. I mean, good luck with that. Let me know how it works out." And like making certain parts of us less valuable than other parts. It's like they're all valuable. And when we resist them, they're going to put up a fit, they're going to tantrum.
You're totally going to try and then what's the message you're saying? When you have a part of yourself that you need to conquer or that you're telling to shut up, you're saying to yourself that there's a part of you that's unworthy. Like we can never get rid of any part of ourselves. So when I'm beating up on that little kid, I'm just telling myself that that's a piece of me that I wish didn't existed or didn't exist.
Hmm.
How harsh is that? And
Yeah.
then you wonder why so many people are stressed out and why so many people feel imposter syndrome, or they see problems wherever they go, and they see people disrespecting them or they see people not liking them, it's because they don't like them, right? We see what we hide.
Right. Yeah. 100%. 100% agree with that. And that's what I think too is the root of addiction or trying to
Mm,
escape because we have all these holes inside. And I believe those holes are created by the pieces of ourselves that we've rejected. It's like, looking down like, nope, that part of me is no, hell no, you don't belong, and like ripping out chunks. And so
mm.
we're full of these holes, and many of us, me included, for many, many years, like trying to fill those from the outside. Like, I need attention, I need praise, I need love, I need recognition, whatever it is. And it's like you can never fill those until you bring those fractured pieces back and welcome them in and really look at the value of each piece because they all have value.
And it's fun. I love this conversation because I often hear people talk about holes and fractures and broken pieces. And I love to look at it in a slightly different context. I love to look at it from the you're not broken or full of holes, you are buried. And the weight of all of those things that you feel about yourself that aren't good enough, they're not holes, they're like monoliths. They're not hidden, they're hurting. They're weighing you down. They're preventing you from breathing. They're stopping you in your tracks like great big red stop signs. And when we allow them an audience and we allow them to be seen and we go in and under like the mountain that is them, that is burying us alive, and we go in and we look at each particular stone, it's like it's only sitting on us because it can't get our darn attention, right? It just
Yeah.
that's why it's sitting, that's why it's burying us alive, because we won't even look at it. And until we do, all of those pieces will continue to suffocate us. And I mean, when we talk about love, no wonder love can't get in. All of those pieces are, it's this gigantic mountain on top of us. And we
Mm.
can't get any love until we learn to love all of those things. And then I believe those pieces on their own normalize, they go into balance. I think the mountain is parts of us that are out of balance. And when we bring those things into balance, they become feathers. They become this light, glowy light, literally light, like sunlight type light part of us instead of rocks that we don't pay any attention to. Is
Or
this getting very
shadows. Yeah.
metaphorical?
Yeah, I love it because you're saying light, which reminds me, like, a lot of people consider that to be their shadow. So it's kind of goes together that way too.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful too. Like, over the years, I used to really be resistant to certain words. Like, my mom, selfish was a really bad one. If she called me selfish, I was like, oh, I'm the most unworthy, most unlovable girl in the whole world. And now it's like I just play with it, and I see it as such a gift because without me being selfish, I would have nothing to give anyone. It's when I'm resisting being selfish, the last person on my list is me, right? I'm the last person I'm going to give anything to.
Oh, I love that so much because that's part of the whole, what we were just saying, that balance equation where somebody's, I can't be selfish. Well, okay, so let's look at what the opposite of selfish is. It's to be a never-ending fountain of giving. And I will tell you where that goes. That goes to bitterness, resentment, hate. That goes to I am sacrificing my life, my health. I'm not doing it because I love these people. I'm not doing it out of gratitude and joy. I'm doing it out of obligation. Like, look at this thing that you're stuffing is causing a polarization over here. They're balancing each other and they're doing it in a non-supportive way. So bringing it back in, like you said, yeah, selfish has power, and it's selfish isn't bad. Selfish is only, it doesn't work when it's out of balance, right? We've got to take care of ourselves first. We have to take care of ourselves first. If
Yeah.
I'm not selfish, I am dishonest to myself, and
Mm.
that's not going to work ever. So I'm going to honor the fact that you brought that example up because that's so powerful. And how many people do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you on all of that. It's so big, especially with women, I find. We're serving, serving, serving. And it turns out serving is masculine energy. I'm like, what? Because it's doing, doing, doing rather than receiving. And we are meant to do both. We're meant to give and receive. But when you block that receiving, like how many women have you seen where they're like, you offer them a compliment, they give you one back. You offer to do something for them, they're like, no, no, I got it. It's okay. And
Yeah.
they get to learn to receive and say, oh, yes, please. Oh, thank you so much. And to really receive it. Because the moment, like if you compliment me and I give you one back, I just took away your good feelings.
Yeah.
It's taking energy.
That is very, very true. And I have this wonderful exercise that I love to do. And an it's a an inventory of your emotional weight. And I will sit, people down, men, women, and it's a fun exercise. And they get to describe all of the things in rooms that they find heavy emotionally.
Mm,
And then we get to have a talk about, well, hey, did you know? Like, because we usually do it in a group, and what'll happen is we'll say, hey, did you notice that, Samantha over there, maybe she said something just like you. Every time she tries to compliment her husband, he always throws it back at her, and then she feels like she can never give because it's not being received. And we have someone over here who never thought that that was heavy emotional weight, and so they get to notice and put a little point down that they and when you consider the ways that you show up in the world, that you are actually heavy on other people, not
mm,
intentionally, but through little things like that, it's an eye opener. Like, what's your emotional weight is such a powerful exercise to consider for yourself, because we get to acknowledge again all of those parts of us, and just it can be so powerful when you realize, oh geez, these are old stories, these are old things, they're causing me to show up in this way that's creating a result I don't want, and I didn't even know I
mhm.
didn't want it. And it's amazing.
Yeah, I love that you're doing it in groups too, because how eye-opening. Like you and I can, be talking heads and talk about it, but when you see it firsthand, you're like, oh my gosh. And the group experience is so rich because everybody has their own perspectives and they're all valid. And everybody, of course, is mirroring different parts of us all
Mhm.
the time.
I really I love all of my group. I love workshops. I love all of those things for that reason. And it's really funny because I think, and I'm new, 2, 3 years in now, but post-pandemic. So I have always known the world that I know in the way that I know it. But I've talked to people who coached and who did various things, pre-pandemic and during pandemic, and their experience is that people are very surprised when let's do an exercise and let's share. Let's be vulnerable in front of each other. And apparently this is a thing that people aren't used to doing because they want to shut off their camera. And I was like, oh, very interesting. I don't let mine shut off their camera.
Oh no, no, I'm with you.
But I guess I don't know, maybe it created a whole new thing. I wasn't around pre or during pandemic in this
Hmm.
context. So I thought that was very interesting that people get used to hiding.
Yeah, I haven't been in any context where that's really been permissible. You know, really think about it. Like if you're there, you're on camera. Like,
Yep, that's fair. Our the coaching bubbles we've been in have been pretty strict on that, but I just found that an interesting thing, and I wondered about that.
hmm, I don't know. Like
But anyways, not to derail.
some people like to voyeur, I guess. And, you know, I honor everybody's process. I would not invite them to stay there, really. Like I understand that you
Mhm.
don't want to be on camera. And if you're here, it's because you're ready to shift the shit, right? You want to get out of where you are, or else you wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
So
this
I
is
don't know.
true.
I call people forward, like, come on, let's play. Like, because really, in my circles, there is nothing unacceptable. Like, nothing about you is unacceptable.
Yeah,
Nothing. Everything is welcome.
that's true. I'm curious, And I don't want to take us off on a tangent, but I'm very curious. What would be your response to somebody who never stood up for themselves and they were like, no, today I don't want to be on camera. And it was their way of owning their power, which is right. That's their experience. How would that look?
I don't I don't know that that's them owning their power, to be honest. Um, for me, that's like that gray line where it's like their humanness or their ego is saying, if you show up on camera, people are going to reject you. So here's what you say. And it gives you this really logical thing. You say you're using your voice today, and that's how you're going to stand up and get what you want and stay safe.
Oh, interesting.
That's how I
I
see
think
it.
I can think of some scenarios where that would absolutely be the case, for sure. I can also think of scenarios where I don't think that would be the case. But in the same context, and I'm imagining from what you've just said there, I think it would be very powerful for people to, as you say, own their power without hiding their face.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's inviting them in. And
Like that.
also, if it's a group, in order to provide safety for the group, we have to be able to see what's going on because there could be 10 people in that room and these other people are pouring out their hearts. That doesn't create safety
Yeah,
for the group. So
absolutely.
it's looking at the whole picture and honoring, I would honor their choice and invite them to make one, like come on camera or I'm going to invite you to leave with love and you can watch the replay.
Yeah, powerful. That's so powerful.
So I don't know, that's me. And there's a lot of intuition that goes into it too in the moment. So, I
Hmm.
mean, that's what I'm saying now because 'cause I'm not in the situation.
And granted, I know you, I've known you for a while, so I feel like you would feel into it very intuitively. And if there was a special circumstance or an extenuating circumstance, that would be considered, or there would be whatever. The
Yeah,
situation's a situation. But
it is.
I'm very happy you shared that with me. See, I feel like I'm learning here as I'm discussing. I'm on and I'm also learning. This is the story of my life. I love it so much.
Well, we're always like that, right? Like, for me, like, you and I both have this thirst for learning. We love learning new things, and, I know what I know, and I'm always expanding it. So, I love having guests on that know different things or, like, tweaks on the same things. Like, the way that you explain things is different than the way I explain things, and
Yeah,
it's adds richness to everybody.
it really does.
So
I
what
love.
would you say, like for somebody who's struggling with, let's just go back to the inner critic, what would you say like some actionable steps are for them that they could take to kind of make friends with it?
Oh, okay. Well, it's a very, very simple process. Well, simple in writing, not simple in execution, as most coaching methodologies are. They're not hard, but they do require work. And so the first thing that I say to my clients, that I say to my groups is when you feel your inner critic, one, that's a celebration because you've recognized it, you've named it. And those are two incredibly powerful things. What you see, you can shift. You cannot shift what you cannot see. So notice it, name it. The next step, always breathe, because this is a neocortex function. This is a front brain function. You need to be able to think. And one of the things that happens when we're triggered, when we encounter our inner critic, and especially we usually encounter it in a real time when something's going off the rails. So it's not like a super ideal circumstance for this thing to be in our face. And what we normally do is we start to shallow breathe.
Mm,
That as soon as people get panicked, they start to shallow breathe. If you've ever been to the scene of it, like an accident, one of the things that you will be asked if you are in that accident is breathe deeply. Breathe deeply. There's a reason for that. Um, when you shallow breathe, you deprive your brain of oxygen. It uses 20% of your total energy. It is a hog on resources. And when you deprive it of that oxygen, it doesn't work, which means your lizard brain, your instincts, they're running the show. And you can go into a spiral like nobody's business if you don't get that online. So when you notice it and you name it, check your breathing. Not
mm,
even a joke. Check your breathing. Take 3 super deep breaths. That's usually enough of a disconnect for you to bring that part of your brain back online, even in a small way, And then you can kind of check yourself and say, okay, am I in a position where I can have a conversation right now? Can I have a conversation? If you're not in a position to have a conversation, you get to make a note, a literal note to yourself and to this part of you of when you're going to come back to this, because it's really important. 99% of the time you'll be able to have the conversation. And that's the next step, is not you telling it what you want, not you not you pushing your agenda. This is like relationship 101. You would not do that to someone you cared about. It is time for you to listen. You listen to this part of you. Ask it questions. Hey, I noticed you happen to be popping up right now, 5 minutes before my interview with Karen, telling me I'm a hot piece of garbage and I don't know anything. I'm curious. Like, what's up? What are we worried about? What's like, talk to me. I actually want to know. And let that part, and I promise you it will speak. It, it will speak, and it will say all kinds of stuff. Like, you don't know this person. What if people are there that, don't resonate with what you're saying? What if this? What if that? What if all of these things? And usually they're fear-based. Usually it's about me getting kicked out of the tribe. Usually it's about me screwing things up so that I end up alone, or I end up messing up my job or my ability to earn income, right? Some sort of, at the base level, some sort of survival issue, which is back to that 5-year-old girl. And so I just keep asking her questions. And when she is done, it is not, and this is where a lot of people go wrong. When you've asked questions and you get those answers, the next step isn't to convince that part of you that, no, you can do this anyways. It's okay. I'm going to teach you now in this moment, in this 5 minutes, to get rid of 30 years of history. And we're going to walk across this line together right now. Let's do it. I mean, if you had a 5-year-old in the room right now, she'd laugh at you. She'd laugh just hearing me
Are you
say
saying
that.
I'm a 5-year-old?
Right? You say that to your 5-year-old, you say that to any 5-year-old. I just challenge you, go and say that to a 5-year-old and see the results you get. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
So the thing you want to do next is, you don't want to tell it. You want to say, what is the step you're comfortable with? Like, I can't not show up, but what's the step you're comfortable with? Like, how do we work together? Like, you want to get on the same side of the table. What is a win for you? Is a win for you that, my screen is off? Well, maybe we can talk about that and we can work through that later. Okay. What is a win for my 5-year-old? And often the win for my 5-year-old was just that I freaking acknowledged her and that I was willing to do something a little bit different. I mean, she used to say all kinds of she used to say all kinds of wild stuff. And when she got mad at people, I don't even want to tell you what she wanted. She was not a healthy kid, but she's much healthier now. So most of the time she's happy with me just having listened. And then when she does say, okay, well, the next smallest step I'm okay with is, well, let's have some notes. Let's have some things ready so that just in case you don't look dumb, let's do this. I'm like, okay. And so that's your next step, is you ask your inner critic what it wants, what it's comfortable with, what its next smallest step is. And then you do your best to figure out a way that that can work for you, that you can incorporate that, because what you're doing is you're building self-trust. And a lot of people don't have self-trust. They have pretty much zero self-trust. And this process is how we start to build self-trust again. If you force your inner critic to do things it doesn't want without listening to it, without incorporating any of its ideas, you're killing the trust. It's just like any other relationship. Like, if you had a spouse, if you had a kid and you did that, you would kill that trust too. So you really want to work together. You want to be on the same side of the table. And then the final step, once you've gone through all that stuff and you've talked it out and you found something that part of you is comfortable with and that you can still move forward with, you thank it. You thank it for being exactly the way it is. You acknowledge the courage that part of you took to stand up in this situation and let you know something was wonky. You acknowledge it. You acknowledge all of those things. And then that's it. That's your process.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And thank you so much for sharing that. Everyone is going to love that because it's so simple yet actionable. So the big thing is like remembering in the moment. And my experience tells me that most of the time you'll remember right after. the first time. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. I get to do that thing. And the next time you'll remember it a little bit earlier and just be gentle with yourself. The fact that you remember to do it at all is, again, cause for celebration, like Anna was saying. So thank you so much. That's amazing. So
Thank you.
tell everybody like where they can find you. I will put that in the show notes on the YouTube channel, but where they can find you and then what you have coming up.
Okay, well, you can find me on Facebook. I am Anna Lang 76. You can also find me in under groups Permission to Shift on Facebook. My website is annalang.ca, and I have an event coming up on Monday. It's going to be beautiful. It is a 4 and a bit hour boot camp, and this boot camp is all about the 6 things you've got to dial in so that you can work with things like your inner critic. So your inner critic
Mm.
is part of that internal safety system that you develop to keep yourself alive. You got a whole bunch of things going on. And before you can work with any of them, you gotta dial in your foundations, or else all of your work, you'll take the courses and read the books and all this stuff, and all that work's just gonna fall in the gaps. It's just gonna fall in the gaps. So what I do on Monday is every year, once a year, I throw this workshop and I give you all those 6 keys, and we do actionable exercises. I give you the neuroscience. I tell you what your brain is doing. And then you take that stuff home and you have those 6 keys that you can then work with. And it's amazing.
Wow, that sounds phenomenal. So everybody look for that. Go to Anna's website, Anna Lang, Lang.ca, as in Canada, eh? Thank you so much for watching Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. Thank you so much for being here and sharing so beautifully with us, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you
We
for
will
having
see you right here next week.